Work had been difficult of late. Coming back from work was even more difficult as he knew that there was no food at home. He was going home to go and eat gari and sugar. Gari was a staple cassava derivative that all the starch had been removed. Since the new government had been sworn in, he had been finding it difficult to make ends meet. The removal of the petrol subsidy by the government had thrown the whole Nigerian economy into chaos. Prices of goods were very high. On the average, he was considered to be amongst the lucky few because at least he still had a home to go to. A home which he did not have to pay rent for. He had inherited a large flat from his late uncle. The house was surrounded by a fence. So at least he had privacy at home. He was owing rent at the small shop which he mentioned as his business place. It was a small gallery combined with recording studio, and it also served as the head office of all his other small-time business dealings. His name was Jabbar, and he was 41 years old. Anytime he remembered his age, he felt bad. He felt like a loser. He felt unaccomplished. He believed that the more financial stability he had, the happier he would be. These days business was very slow. The economic situation in the country had turned most people into robots who just looked for how they were going to get their next meal. Very few people had access for things like recording music demos or even buying or commissioning artworks. Everywhere was hard. Money was scarce. There was hunger in the land, as one of his literature teachers would say. He forgot which of them, but he knew he had heard the saying many times in the past. Today seemed to have started like any other day before. He got to the studio around 9 a.m. as he usually did on a Monday. He opened the studio metal doors and went ahead to start cleaning the studio. A few minutes later, and he had finished cleaning the studio. He then sat at his desk, which contained a laptop computer connected to a large 24-inch Dell monitor. He put on the laptop computer and waited for it to boot. After the computer finished booting, he opened his Cubase 8 digital audio recording suite. He started editing a recording that he had made some days ago for a radio jingle. Evening came without Jabbar doing much work in the studio. He could not remember exactly how he managed to fill his day with work. But he actually did fill his day with work. Much of it was work that he knew was not going to pay him any money. He just needed to fill up his time. Usually he closed from work at about 5:30 p.m. He looked at his Android phone. The time was 5:45 p.m. He decided to start parking his things to prepare for his exit. His things meaning laptop and phone. 5 minutes later, he was ready to close the studio and return home. As he was about to close the metal door of his shop, he heard a call. Jabbar! Jabbar! Jabbar turned round to face whomever it was that was calling out his name. His eyes caught the caller. It was one of his artists. His name was Dele, but people called him Delord. Delord was his stage moniker. He was a very popular local artiste. He had started his singing career at Jabbar's recording studio, but when he started getting popular, he decided to abandon Jabbar's studio and go to other bigger studios. Jabbar wondered what had brought him back to his studio. "What brought you here?" Jabbar asked Delord. "Please, I want to record a quick freestyle. I need it for a show this night." Delord said. "I have already closed for the day," Jabbar answered. "Please, I need your help. You know that you are the only producer in Benue State that can record, mix and master in record time. No other music producer is as fast as you are. Please help me," Delord pleaded. Jabbar pretended to think for a moment. After a few seconds, he said, "Let's get into the studio for some jam making." Delord smiled and Jabbar opened the door, and they both went in. It was already dark when Jabbar finished the demo song and transferred it to Delord's phone. Delord transferred money through an app on his phone to Jabbar. Jabbar locked the studio. He checked his phone clock. The time was 8:15 p.m. The work had taken almost 2 hours. Finally, he locked the studio. He looked around and he noticed that all the other shops on his block were locked. Only the security office that was located at the end of the building was open. Inside, he saw 2 security men. They were having some kind of argument. From his distance away, he could not really hear what they were saying, but he knew that it was either about football matches or women in general. Jabbar moved towards the main road away from the block of shops. There was a solar street light illuminating the part of the road that led to Jabbar's studio. He stood under the street light for a moment before continuing his walk towards his home. Jabbar kept his head low as he walked the 2-kilometer distance from his studio to his home. Somewhere between his home and his studio, about halfway, there was a mechanic village where vehicle mechanics repaired cars. At this time of the night, the place was usually deserted and quiet because everybody would have gone home after work. Jabbar was surprised to see a group of cars lined up in the dark. They were coming out of the mechanic village. When they were close, Jabbar realized that all the cars were government-issued Toyota Hilux trucks. All were white in color with sealed plate numbers. He got all this from ambient light that flashed on the sides of the cars as they passed him at high speed. Jabbar had to move a little bit into the side of the road because he knew that these government drivers were notoriously fond of hitting pedestrians. Just as the last vehicle in the convoy passed him, something unexpected happened. There was a pothole close to the center of the road. The front tire of the Hilux hit the pothole and the car swerved a little bit. The driver probably did not see the pothole in time to dodge it, so he hit it squarely. The driver continued driving behind the vehicle in front of him. But something had happened in that brief moment that the truck hit the pothole. Something had fallen out of the back of the truck. Jabbar turned to look at the truck to see if it would stop, but the Hilux continued at great speed with the others. He took a few steps further, then stopped and went back to where he saw the thing that had fallen out of the truck drop. He saw nothing. Everywhere was dark and Jabbar did not want to put on his phone torchlight for fear of attracting people's interest. He started searching carefully. He saw nothing. But just as he was about to conclude that maybe the thing falling out of the Hilux was just a figment of his imagination, he saw the object from the corner of his eyes. It was a big, black, traveling bag. It seemed to be filled up. He went towards the bag carefully and tapped it. It sounded as if it was full of clothes. But Jabbar, being a music producer, had ears that were very sensitive and attuned to sound, so at the back of his mind he knew that this bag was not filled with clothes. Hello looked around. There was nobody close to him. He picked up the bag. The bag was surprisingly heavy. When he stood up, he did not care to look around again. He started walking home with the bag. Anybody seeing him would assume that the bag was his own. Hello walked with confidence. Although the confidence was only on the outside. Inside he was scared. For one, he did not even know what was in the bag he had carried. For all he knew, it could be human parts.